Okay, we'll continue. Everything's working out. Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, drilling the king. 28. On the morning of the fourth day, when it was just sunrise, and we had been tramping an hour in the chill dawn, I came to a resolution. The king must be drilled. Things could not go on so. He must be taken in hand and deliberately and conscientiously drilled, or we could never venture to enter a dwelling. The very cats would know this masquerader for a humbug and no peasant. So I called a halt and said, Sire, as between clothes and countenance you are all right. There is no discrepancy, but as between your clothes and your bearing you are all wrong. There is a most noticeable discrepancy. Your soldiery stride, your lordly port, these will not do. You stand too straight, your looks are too high, too confident. The cares of a kingdom do not stoop the shoulders, they do not droop the chin, they do not depress the high level of the eye glance, they do not put doubt and fear in the heart and hang out the signs of them in slouching body and unsure step. It is the sordid cares of the lowly born that do these things. You must learn the trick. You must imitate the trademarks of poverty, misery, oppression, insult, and the other several and common inhumanities that sap the manliness out of a man and make him a loyal and proper and approved subject and a satisfaction to his masters. Or the very infants will know you for better than you disguise, and we shall go to the pieces at the first hut we stop at. Pray, try walk like this. The king took careful note, and then tried an imitation. Pretty fair, pretty fair. Chin a little lower, please. There, very good. Eyes too high. Pray don't look at the horizon. Look at the ground, 10 steps in front of you. Ah, that is better. That is very good. Wait, please. You betray too much vigor, too much decision. You want more of a shamble. Look at me, please. This is what I mean. Now you are getting it. That is the idea, at least. It sort of approaches it. Yes, that is pretty fair. But there is a great big something wanting. I don't quite know what it is. Please walk 30 yards so that I can get a perspective on the thing. Now then, your head's right, speed's right, shoulders right, eyes right, chin right, gait, carriage, general style right, everything's right. And yet the fact remains, the aggregate's wrong. The account is wrong. Do it again, please. Now I think I begin to see what it is. Yes, I've struck it. You see the genuine spiritlessness and wanting. That's what the trouble is. All I'm addressing. The mechanical details all right, almost to a hair. Delusion perfect, except that it don't delude. What then must one do to prevail? Let me think. I can't seem to quite get at that. In fact, there isn't anything that can get right the matter but practice. This is a good place for it. Roots and stony ground to break up your stately gait, a region not liable to interruption. Only one field to one hut in sight, and they so far away that nobody could see us from there. It would be well to move a little off the road and put the whole day drilling you, sire. Quit calling home. After the drill had gone on a little while, I said, Now, sire, imagine that we at the door of the hut yonder, and the family are before us. Proceed, please. Accost the head of the house. The king unconsciously straightened up like a monument, and said, with frozen austerity, Varlet, bring a seat, and serve to me with cheer ye have. Ay, your grace, that is not well done. It what lacketh it. These people do not call each other varlets. Nay, is that true? Yes, only those above them call them so. Then must I try again, I will call him villain. No, for he may be a free man. Ah, so, then peradventure I shall call him a good man. That would answer, your grace, but it would be still better if you said friend or brother. Brother, to dirt like that? Ah, but we are pretending to be dirt like that, too. It is even true, I will say it. Brother, bring a seat, and thereto what cheer ye have, withal. Now 'tis right. Not quite, not wholly right. You have asked for one, not us for one. Not both, food for one, a seat for one. The king was puzzled. He wasn't a very heavyweight, intellectually. His head was an hourglass. It could stow an idea, but it had to do it in a grain at a time, not the whole idea at once. Would you have a seat also, and sit? If I did not sit, the man would perceive that we were only pretending to be equals, and playing the deception pretty poorly too. It is well and truly said, how wonderful is truth, how come it in whatsoever unexpected form it may. Yes, it must bring out seats and food for both, and in serving us present not ewer and napkin, with more show of respect to the one than to the other. And there is even yet a detail that needs correcting. He must bring nothing outside. We will go in among the dirt and possibly other repulsive things, and take the food with the household, and after the fashion of the house, and all on equal terms, except the man be of serf class. And finally there will be no ewer and no napkin, whether he be serf or free. Please walk again, my liege. There, it is better, it is the best yet, but not perfect. The shoulders have known no ignobler burden than iron mail, and they will not stoop. Give me, then, the bag. I will learn the spirit that goeth with burdens that have not honor. It is the spirit that stoopeth the shoulders. I ween and not the weight, for armor is heavy, yet it is proud burden. And a man standeth straight in it. Nay, but me no buts, offer me no objections. I will have the thing, strap it on my back. No. It was complete now with that knapsack on. Revenge of the nerds. And looked as little like a king as any man I'd ever seen. But it was an obstinate pair of shoulders. They could not seem to learn the trick of stooping with any sort of deceptive naturalness. The drill went on, I prompting and correcting. Now, make believe you are in debt, and eaten up by relentless creditors. You are out of work, which is horseshoeing, let us say, and can get none. And your wife is sick. Your children are crying because they are hungry. And so on, so on. I drilled him as representing in turn all sorts of people out of luck and suffering dire privation and misfortunes. But Lord, it was only just words. Words. They meant nothing in the world to him. I might just as well have whistled. Words realize nothing. Vivify nothing to you, unless you have suffered in your own person the thing which the words try to describe. There are wise people who talk ever so knowingly and complacently about the working classes, and satisfy themselves that a day's hard intellectual work is very much harder than a day's hard manual toil, and is righteously entitled to much bigger pay. Why they really think that? You know, because they know all about the one, but haven't tried the other. But I know all about both, and so far as I am concerned, there isn't money enough in the universe to hire me to swing a pickaxe 30 days. But I will do the hardest kind of intellectual work for just as near nothing as you can cipher it down, and I will be satisfied too. Intellectual work is misnamed. It is a pleasure, a dissipation, and its own highest reward. The poorest paid architect, engineer, general author, sculptor, painter, lecturer, advocate, legislator, actor, preacher, singer is constructively in heaven when he is at work. And as for the musician with the fiddle bow in the hand who sits in the midst of the great orchestra with the ebbing and flowing tides of divine sound washing over him, why, certainly, he is at work, if you wish to call it that. But Lord, it's a sarcasm just the same. The law of work does seem utterly unfair, but there it is, and nothing can change it now. The higher the pay and enjoyment the worker gets out of it, the higher shall be his pay in cash, also. And it's also the very law of those transparent swindles, transmissible nobility and kingship. I appreciate you. Go ahead and get that on legal documentation. Excuse me, I think he's in disbelief, maybe. I mean, I can end it real quick, I believe. Excuse me, no, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Carrier kill.
Let me turn the page.
Bomb taken. Bomb army.
Excuse me. Chapter 29. The Smallpox Hut.
Bomb army.
Which was reported
Bomb taken.
in the correct manner. When we arrived at the hut at mid-afternoon, we saw no signs of life about it. The field nearby had been denuded of its crops some time before and had a skinned look so exhaustively and had been harvested and gleaned. Fences, sheds, everything had a ruined look and were elegant of poverty. No animal was around anywhere. No living thing in sight. The stillness was awful. It was like the stillness of death. The cabins were one-story one whose thatch was black with age and ragged with the lack of repair. The store stood a trifle ajar. We approached it stealthily on tiptoe and a half-breath, for that is the wondrous feeling make him do at such a time. The king knocked. We waited. No answer. Knocked again. No answer. I pushed the door softly open and looked in. I made out some dim forms, and a woman started up the ground and stated to me, as one does who is wakened from sleep. Presently she found her voice. "Have mercy," she pleaded. "All is taken, nothing is left." "I have not come to take anything, poor woman." "You are not a priest?" "No." "Nor come not from the lord of the manor?" "No, I am a stranger." "Oh, then, for the fear of God, who visits with misery and death such as he, harmless, tarry not here, but fly. This place is under his curse, and his churches. Let me come in and help you. You are sick and in trouble." I was better used to the dim light now. I could see her hollow eyes fixed upon me. I could see how emaciated she was. "I tell you the place is under the church's ban. Save yourself and go, before some straggler see thee here and report it. Give yourself no trouble about me. I don't care anything for the church's curse. Let me help you."
5 minutes remaining.
"Now, all good spirits, if there be any such, bless thee for that word. Would God I had a sup of water? But hold, forget I said it, fly. For there is that here, that even he that feareth not the church must fear, this disease whereof we die. Leave us, thou brave good stranger, and take with thee such whole and sincere blessing as them that be accursed can give." But before this I had picked up a wooden bowl and was rushing past the king on my way to the brook. It was 10 yards away. When I got back and entered, the king was within and was opening the shutter and closed the window. Hold to it. Hold to, let her air in and light. The place was full of a foul stench. I put the bowl to a woman's lips, and she gripped it with her eager talons. The shutter came upon a strong light and flooded her face. Smallpox. I sprang to the king and said in his ear, out of the door on the instant, "Sire, the woman is dying of that disease that wasted the skirts of Camelot 2 years ago." He did not budge. "Of a truth I shall remain, and likewise help." I whispered again, "King, it must not be. You must go. Ye mean well, and ye speak not unwisely, but it were shame that a king should know fear, and the shame that belted knight should withhold his hand where be such as need succour. Peace, I will not go. It is you who must go. The church's ban is not upon me, but it forbiddeth you to be here. And she will deal with you with a heavy hand on a word come to her of your trespass." It was a desperate place for him to be in, and might cost him his life, but it was no use to argue with him. If he considered his knightly honor at stake here, and was the end of argument,
Bomb army.
he would stay, and nothing could prevent it. I was aware of that, and so I dropped the subject. The woman spoke.
Carrier killed.
"Fair sir, of your kindness will you climb the ladder there and bring me news of what you find? Be not afraid to report, for times can come when even a mother's heart is past breaking, being already broke." "Abide," said the king, "and give the woman to eat. I will go." And he put down the knapsack.
Objective.
I turned to start, but the king had already started. He halted and looked down upon a man who lay in a dim light and had not noticed us thus far or spoken.
Bomb taken.
"Is it your husband?" the king asked.
Bomb
"Yes."
army.
"Is he asleep?" "God be thanked for that one charity. Yes. These 3 hours, where shall I pay to the full my gratitude, for my heart is bursting with it, for that sleep he sleepeth now." I said, "We will be careful. We will not wake him." "I know that she will not, for he is dead." "Dead?"
The objective.
"Yes. What triumph is it to know it? None can harm him, none insult him more. He is in heaven now, and happy, or if not there, he abides in hell and is content. For in that place he will find neither abbot nor yet bishop. We were boy and girl together, we were man and wife these 25 years, and never separated till this day. Think how long that is to love and suffer together. This morning was he out of his mind, and in his fancy we were boy and girl again, and wandering his happy fields, and so in that innocent glad converse wandering he far and further, still lightly gossiping, and entered into these other fields we know not of, and was shut away from mortal sight. And so there was no party, for his fancy I went with him. He knew not, but I went with him, my hand in his,
Objective.
my young soft hand, not this withered claw.
Bomb taken.
Ah yes, to go and know it not, to separate and know it not, How could one go peacefully than that? It was the reward for a cruel life patiently borne. There was a slight noise from the direction of the dim corner where the ladder was. It was the king descending. I could see that he was bearing something in one arm and assisting himself with the other. He came forward into the light. Upon his breast lay a slender girl of 15. She was but half conscious. She was dying of smallpox. Here was heroism at its last and loftiest possibility, its utmost summit. This was challenging death in the open field unarmed, with all the odds against the challenger. No reward set upon the contest, and no admiring world in silks and cloth of gold to gaze and applaud. And yet the king's bearing was serenely brave, as it had always been in those cheaper contests, where knight meets knight, in equal fight and clothed in protecting steel.
30 seconds
He was great now, sublimely great. The rude statues of his ancestors in his palace should have an addition. I would see to that, and it would not be a male king killing a giant or a dragon, like the rest. It would be a king in countless garb, bearing death in his arms, that a peasant mother might look her last upon her child and be comforted. He laid the girl down by her mother, who poured out endearments and caresses from an overflowing heart, and one could detect a flickering faint light of response in the child's eyes, but that was all. The mother hung over her, kissing her, petted her, and imploring her to speak, but the lips only moved and no sound came. I snatched my liquor flask from my knapsack. The woman forbade me and said,
carrier kill.
"No, she does not suffer. Is it better so? It might bring her back to life. None that be so good and kind as ye are would do her that cruel hurt. For look you, what is left to live for? Her brothers are gone, her father is gone, her mother goeth, the church's curse is upon her, and none may shelter her or befriend her, even though she lay perishing in the road. She is desolate. I have not asked you, good heart, if her sister be still on live, here overhead. I had no need. Ye had gone back, else, and not left the poor thing forsaken. She lieth at peace," interrupted the king in a subdued voice. "I would not change it. How rich is the day in happiness! Ah, my honest! Thou shalt join thy sister soon. Thou'rt on thy way, and these be merciful friends that will not hinder." And so she fell to murmuring, cooing over the girl again, and softly stroking her face and hair, and kissing her, and calling her by the endearing names. But there was scarcely sign of response now in the glazing eyes. I saw tears well from the king's eyes and trickle down his face. The woman noticed them too, and said, "Ah, I know that sign. Thou'st a wife at home, poor soul, and she have gone hungry to bed. Many's the time that the little ones might have your crust. You know what poverty is, and the daily insults of your betters, and the heavy hand of the church and the king." The king winced under this accidental home shot, but kept still. He was learning his part, and he was playing it well too. For a pretty dull beginner, I struck up a diversion. I offered the woman food and liquor, but she refused both. She would allow nothing to come between her and the release of death. Then I slipped away and brought the dead child from aloft, and laid it by her. This broke her down again, and there was another scene that was full of heartbreak. By and by I made another diversion, and beguiled her to sketch her story. Ye know it well yourselves, having suffered it, for truly none of your condition in Britain escape it. It is the old weary tale. We fought and struggled and succeeded, meaning by success that we lived and did not die. More than it is not to be claimed, no troubles came that we could not outlive, till this year brought them. Then came they all at once, as one might say, and overwhelmed us. Years ago the lord of the manor planted certain fruit trees on our farm, and the best part of it, too, a grievous wrong and shame. But it was his right, interrupted the king. None denieth that, indeed, and the law mean anything. What is the Lord's is his, and what is mine is his also. None denieth that, indeed, and the law mean anything. What is the Lord's is his, and what is mine is his also. Our farm was ours by lease, therefore 'twas likewise his to do with it as he would. Some little time ago 3 of those trees were found hewn down. Our 3 grown sons ran frightened to report the crime. Well, in his lordship's dungeon there they lie, who set there shall they lie and rot till they confess. They have not to confess, being innocent, wherefore there will they remain until they die. Ye know that right well, I ween. Think how this left us, a man, a woman, and 2 children, to gather a crop that was planted by so much greater force. Yes, and protect it night and day from pigeons and prowling animals that be sacred and must not be hurt by any of our sorts. When my lord's crop was nearly ready for the harvest, so also was ours. When his bell rang to call us to the fields to harvest his crop for nothing, he would not allow that, I and my 2 girls should count for our 3 captive sons, but for only 2 of them. So for the lacking one were we daily fined. All this time our own crop was perishing through neglect, and so both the priest and his lordship fined us because their shares of it were suffering through damage. In the end, the fines ate up our crop, and they took it all. They took it all and made us harvest it for them, without pay or food, and we starving. Then the worst came, when I, being out of my mind with hunger and lost my boys and grief, to see my husband and my little maids in rags and misery and despair, uttered a deep blasphemy, 1,000 of them, against the church and the church's ways. It was 10 days ago. I had fallen sick with this disease, and it was to the priest I had said the words, for he was come to chide me for lack of due humility under the chastening hand of God. He carried my trespass to his betters. I was stubborn, wherefore presently upon my head and upon all heads that were dear to me fell the curse of Rome. Since that day we were avoided, shunned with horror. None has come near this hut to know where we live or not. The rest of us were taken down. Then I roused me and got up. As wife and mother will, it was little they could have eaten in any case. It was less than little they had to eat, but there was water, and I gave them that. How they craved it, and how they blessed it. But the end came yesterday. My strength broke down. Yesterday was the last time I ever saw my husband and this youngest child alive. I have lain here all these hours, these ages, you may say, listening for any sound up there that. She gave a sharp, quick glance at her eldest daughter, and cried out, "Oh, my darling," and feebly gathered the stiffening form to her sheltering arms. She had recognized the death rattle.
Ball dropped. Enemy has the ball. Ball dropped. Enemy has the ball.
Chapter 30, The Tragedy of the Manor House. At midnight all was over, and we sat in the presence of 4 corpses. We covered them with such rags as we could find, and started away, fastening the door behind us. Their home must be these people's grave, for they could have Christian burial, or be admitted to consecrated ground. They were as dogs, wild beasts, leopards, and no soul that valued his hope of eternal life would throw it away by meddling with any soul of these rebuked and smitten outcasts. We had not moved 4 steps when I caught a sound as of footsteps upon gravel. My heart flew to my throat. We must not be seen coming from that house. I plucked at the king's robe, and we drew back and took shelter behind the corner of the cabin. Now we are safe, I said, but it was close call, so to speak. If the night had been lighter, we might have seen us, no doubt. He seemed to be so near. Mayhap it is but a beast, and not a man at all. True, but a man or beast, it would be wise to stay here a minute and let it get by and out of the way. Hark, it cometh hither. True again, the step was coming toward us, straight toward the hut. It must be a beast then, and we might as well have saved our trepidation. I was going to step out, but the king laid his hand upon my arm. There was a moment of silence. Then we heard a soft knock on the cabin door. It made me shiver. Presently the knock was repeated, and then we heard these words in a guarded voice. "Mother, father, open, we have got free, and would bring news to pale your cheeks but glad your hearts. And we may not tarry, but must fly. But they answer not, mother, father." I drew the king toward the other end of the hut and whispered, "Come, now we can get to the road." The king hesitated, was going to demur, but just then we heard the door give away, and knew that those desolate men were in the presence of their dead. "Come, my liege. In a moment they will strike a light, and then they will follow that which will break the heart to hear." He did not hesitate this time. The moment we were in the road, I ran, and after a moment he threw dignity aside and followed. I did not want to think of what was happening in the hut. I couldn't bear it. I wanted to drive it out of my mind, so I struck into the first subject that lay under that one in my mind. I have had the disease those people died of, and so have nothing to fear. But if you have not had it also, he broke in upon me to say he was in trouble, and it was his conscience that was troubling him. These young men have got free, they say, but how? It is not likely that their Lord has set him free. Oh no, I make no doubt they escaped. That is my trouble. I have a fear that is so, and your suspicion doth confirm it. You have the same fear. I should not call it by that name, though. I do suspect they escaped, but if they did, I am not sorry, certainly. I am not sorry, I think, but what is it? What is there for one to be troubled about? If they did not escape, then are we bound in duty to lay hands upon them and deliver them again to their Lord? For it is not seemly that one of his qualities should suffer a so insolent and high-handed outrage from persons of their base degree. There it was again. He could see only one side of it. He was born so educated, so his veins were full of ancestral blood that was rotten with the sort of unconscious brutality brought down by inheritance from a long procession of hearts that had each done its share towards poisoning the stream. To imprison these men without proof, and starve their kindred with no harm, for they were merely peasants and subject to the will and pleasant to their lord. No matter what fearful form it might take, but for these men to break out of unjust captivity was insult and outrage, and a thing not to be countenanced by any conscientious person who knew his duty to his sacred caste. I worked more than half an hour before I got him to change the subject, and even then an outside matter did it for me. This was something which caught our eyes as we struck the summit of a small hill. A red glow, a good way off. That's a fire. Fires interested me considerably, because I was getting a good deal of an insurance business started, and was also training some horses and building some steam-like fire engines, with an eye of a paid fire department by and by. The priest opposed both my fire and life insurance, on the ground that it was an insolent attempt to hinder the decrees of God. And if you pointed out that they did not hinder the decrees in the least, but only modified the hard consequences of them if you look at policies and had luck, they retorted that that was gambling against the decrees of God and was just as bad. So they managed to damage those industries more or less, but I got on my accident business. As a rule, a night as a lummox, and sometimes even elaborate hints upon to pretty poor arguments when they came strictly from a superstition monger. But even he could see the practical side of a thing once in a while. And so of late, you couldn't clean up a tournament and pile the result without finding one of my accident tickets in every helmet. We stood there a while in the thick darkness and stillness, looking toward the red blur in the distance, and trying to make out the meaning of a faraway murmur that rose and fell fitfully on the night. Sometimes it swelled up for a moment, seemed less remote, but when he was hopefully expecting it to betray its cause and nature, it dullied and sank again, carrying its mystery with it. We started down the hill in its direction, and the winding road plunged us at once into almost solid darkness. Darkness that was packed and crammed in between two full forest walls. We groped along down for a half-mile perhaps, that murmur growing more and more distinct all the time. The coming storm threatening more and more, with now and then a little shiver of wind, a faint show of lightning and dull grumblings of distant thunder. I was in the lead. I ran against something, a soft, heavy something which gave slightly to the impulse of my weight. At the same moment the lightning glared out. Within a foot of my face was the writhing face of a man who was hanging from the limb of his tree. That is, it seemed to be writhing, but it was not. It was a gruesome sight. Straightway there was an ear-splitting explosion of thunder, and the bottom of the heaven fell out. The rain poured down in a deluge. No matter, we must try to cut the man down, on the chance there might be life in him yet. Mustn't we? The lightning came quick and sharp now, and the place was altering noonday and midnight. One moment the man would be hanging before me in the intense light, and the next he was blotted out again in the darkness.
Enemy has the ball.
I told the king we must cut him down. The king at once objected. If he hanged himself, he was willing to lose the property to his lord. So let him be. If others hanged him, belike they had the right, let him hang. But mean no buts, but even leave him as he is. And for yet another reason, when the lightning cometh again, there will looks abroad.
Gained the lead.
2 others hanging within 50 yards of us. It is not whether meet of doing useless
Nearing
courtesies unto dear folk. They are past thanking you. Come, it is unprofitable to tarry here. There was reason in what he said, so he moved on. Within the next mile we counted 6 more hanging forms by the blaze of the lightning, and altogether it was a grisly excursion. That murmur was a murmur no longer. It was a roar of men's voices. And men came flying by now dimly through the darkness, and others came chasing him. They disappeared. Presently another case of the kind occurred, and then another and another. Then the sudden truth on the road brought us in the sight of that fire. It was a large manor house, and a little of nothing was left of it. Another thing, men were flying, and other men raging after them in pursuit. I warned the king that it was not a safe place for strangers. We had better get away from the light until matters should improve. We stepped back a little and hid the edge of the wood. From this hiding place we saw both men and women hunted by the womb. The fearful work went on until nearly dawn. And then the fire being out and the storm spent, the voices and flying footsteps presently ceased, and darkness and stillness reigned again. We ventured out and hurried cautiously away, and although we were worn out and sleepy, we kept on until we had put this place some miles behind us. Then we asked hospitality at the hut of a charcoal burner and got what was to be had. A woman was up and about, but the man was still asleep on a straw shakedown on the clay floor. The woman seemed uneasy until I explained that we were travelers and had lost our way and had been wandering on the woods all night.
king of the
She became talkative then and asked if we have heard of the terrible goings-on at the manor house of Ablasor. Yes, we had heard of them, but what we wanted now was rest and sleep. The king broke in. Tell us the house and take yourselves away, for we be perilous company, being late come for people that drive the spotted death.
hill incoming. Hill ready. Hill control.
Well, I was gonna switch to
It
magic.
was good of him, but unnecessary. One of the commonest decorations in the nation was the waffle iron face. I had nearly noticed that the woman and her husband were both so decorated. She made us entirely welcome and had no fears, but plainly she was immensely impressed by the king's proposition. For of course it was a good deal of an event of her life to run across a person of the king's humble appearance, who was ready to buy a man's house for the sake of night's lodging. It gave her a large respect for us, and she strained the lean possibilities of her hovel to the utmost to make us comfortable. We slept till far into the afternoon, and then got up hungry enough to make Cotter far quite palatable to the king. The more particular, as it were, scant in quantity, and also in variety. It consisted solely of onion, salt, and the national black bread made out of horse breed. The woman told us about the affair of the evening before, as 10 or 11 at night, when everybody was in bed. The manor house burst into flames, the countryside swayed in the rescue, and the family was saved. The one exception, the master. He did not appear. Everybody was frantic over his loss, and 2 brave humans sacrificed their lives in ransacking the burning house, seeking that valuable personage. But after a while he was found, what was left of him, which was his corpse. It was in a corpse 300 yards away, bound, gagged, stabbed in a dozen places. Who had done this? Suspicion fell upon a humble family in the neighborhood who had been lately treated with a peculiar harshness by the Baron, and from these people the suspicion easily extended itself in their relatives and familiars. A suspicion was enough. My lord's liveried retainers proclaimed an instant crusade against these people, and were promptly joined by the community in general. The woman's husband had been active with the mob and had not returned home until nearly dawn. He was gone now, to find out who the general result had been. While we were still talking, he came back from his quest. His report was revolting enough. 18 persons hanged or butchered, and 2 yeomen and 13 prisoners lost in the fire. And how many prisoners were there together in the vaults? 13. Then every one of them was lost? Yes, all. But the people arrived in time to save the family. How is it they could have none of the prisoners? The man looked puzzled and said, "Would one unlock the vault at such a time? Mary, some would have escaped." "Then you mean that nobody did unlock them?" "None went near them, either to lock or unlock. It standeth to reason, but the bolts were fast. Wherefore it was only needful to establish a watch, so that it was, if any broke the bonds, he might not escape it, but he'd be taken. None were taken." "Nathless 3 did escape," said the king, "and ye will do well to publish it. It set justice upon their track, for these murthered and baron and fired the house." I was just expecting him to come out with that. For a moment the man and his wife showed an eager interest in this news and an impatience to go out and spread it. Then a sudden something else betrayed itself in their faces, and they began to ask questions. I answered the questions myself and narrowly watched the effects produced. I was soon satisfied that the knowledge of whose these 3 prisoners were had somehow changed the atmosphere. That our host's continued eagerness to go and spread the news was now only pretended and not real. The king did not notice the change, and I was glad of that. I worked the conversation around toward other details of the night's proceedings and noted that these people were relieved to have it take that direction. The painful thing observable about all this business was the alacrity with which this oppressed community had turned their cruel hands against their own class in the interest of the common oppressor. The man and woman seemed to feel that and quarrel between a person of their own class and his lord. It was a natural and proper and rightful thing for that poor devil's whole cast to side with the master and fight his battle for him, without ever stopping to inquire into the rights of wrongs of the matters. This man had been out helping to hang his neighbors and had done his work with zeal, and yet was aware that there was nothing against them but a mere suspicion, with nothing back of its descripable as evidence. Still, neither he nor his wife seemed to see anything horrible about it. This was depressing to a man with the dream of a republic in his head. It reminded me of a time 13 centuries away when the poor whites of our South, who were always despised and frequently insulted by the slave lords around them, and who owed their base condition simply to the presence of slavery in their midst, were yet pusillanimously ready to side with the slave lords in all political moves for the upholding and perpetuating of slavery. And it also finally shouldered their muskets and pour out their lives in an effort to prevent the destruction of that very institution which degraded them. And there was only one redeeming feature connected with a pitiful piece of history, and that was, that secretly the poor white did detest the slave lord, and did feel his own shame. That feeling was not brought to the surface, but the fact that it was there and could have been brought out, under favoring circumstances, was something. In fact, it was enough. For it showed that a man at the bottom of a man, after all, even if it doesn't show on the outside. Well, as it turned out, this charcoal burner was just the twin of the son of the poor wife of the far future. The king presently showed impatience and said, "And ye prattle here all day. Justice will miscarry. Think ye the criminals will abide in their father's house? They are fleeing, they are not waiting. Ye should look to it that a party of horse be set upon their track." The woman paled slightly, but quite perceptibly, and the man looked flustered and irresolute. I said, "Come, friend, I will walk a little way with you and explain which direction I think they would try to take. If they were merely resistors of the gabble with some kindred absurdity, I would try to protect them from capture. But when men murder a person of high degree and likewise burn his house, that is another matter." The last remark was for the king, to quiet him. On the road the man pulled the resolution together and began the march with a steady gait, but there was no eagerness in it. By and by I said, "What relation were these men to you, cousins?" He turned as white as his layer of charcoal would let him, and stopped, trembling. "Ah, my God, how now ye that? How know ye that?" "I didn't know it. It was a chance guess. Poor lads, they are lost, and good lads they were too." "Were ye actually going yonder to tell on them?" He didn't quite know how to take that, but he said hesitatingly, "Yes." "Then I think you are a damned scoundrel." It made him as glad as if I had called him an angel. "Say the good words again, brother, for surely ye mean that ye would not betray me, and I failed in my duty." "Duty? There's no duty in the matter, except the duty to keep still and let those men get away. They've done a righteous deed." He looked pleased and touched with apprehension at the same time. He looked up and down the road to see that no one was coming, and then he said in a cautious voice, "From what land come you, brother, that you speak such perilous words and seem not to be afraid?" "They are not perilous words when spoken to one of my own castle, I take it. You would not tell anybody I said them." "I would be drawn asunder by wild horses first." "Well, then, let me say my say. I have no fears of your repeating it. I think devil's work has been done last night upon those innocent poor people. That old baron got only what he deserved. If I had my way, all his kind should have them same luck." Fear and depression vanished from the man's manner, and gratefulness and a brave animation took their place. "Even though you be a spy, and your words a trap for my undoing, yet are they such refreshment, that to hear them again and others like to them, I would go to the gallows happy, as having had one good feast at least in a starved life. And I will say my say now, and ye may report if it ye be so minded. I helped to hang my neighbors for that it were peril to my own life to show lack of zeal in the master's cause. The others helped for none other reason. All rejoice today that he is dead, but all do go about seemingly sorrowing, and straightening the hypocrite's tear, for in that lies safety. I have said the words. The only ones that have ever tasted good in my mouth, and the reward of the taste is sufficient. Lead on, and you will, beat even to the scaffold, for I am ready. There, it was you, see? A man is a man, at bottom. Whole ages of abuse and oppression cannot crush the manhood clear out of him. Whoever thinks that a mistake is himself mistaken. Yes, there is plenty good enough material for a republic of the most degraded people that ever existed, even the Russians. Plenty of manhood in them, even the Germans, if one could put forth it out of his timid and suspicious privacy to overthrow and trample in the mud any throne that ever was set up, any nobility that ever supported it. We should see certain things yet. Let us hope and believe. First, a modified monarchy, till Arthur's days were done, then the destruction of the throne, nobility abolished, every member of it bound out to some useful trade, universal suffrage instituted, and the whole government placed in the hands of men and women of the nation there to remain. Yes, there was no occasion to give up my dream yet awhile.
Hill ready. Enemy team took the hill. Enemy team took the hill.
We'll finish this out and we might do some magic.
Enemy about to score.
Okay. So Marco 31. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. We strolled along in a sufficiently indolent fashion now, talked. We must dispose about the amount of time it ought to take to go to the little hamlet of Avalosor and put justice on the track of those murderers and get back home again. And meantime, I had an auxiliary interest which had never paled yet, never lost its novelty for me since I had been in Arthur's kingdom. The behavior, born of nice and exact subdivisions of caste, of chance passers-by toward each other. Toward the shaven monk who trudged along with his cowl tilted back and the sweat washing down his fat jowls. Joel's. The coal burner was deeply reverent. To the gentleman he was abject. For the small farmer and the free mechanic he was cordial and gossipy. And when a slave passed by with a countenance respectfully lowered, this chap's nose was in the air. He couldn't even see him. Well, there are times when one would like to hang in the whole human race and finish the farce. Presently, we struck an incident. A small mob of half-naked boys and girls came tearing out of the woods, scarred and shrieking. The eldest among them were not more than 12 or 14 years old. They implored help, but they were so beside themselves that we wouldn't make out what the matter was. However, we plunged into the wood, they scurrying in the lead, and the trouble was quickly revealed. They had hanged a little fellow with a bark rope, and he was kicking and struggling, in the process of choking to death. We rescued him and fetched him around. It was some more human nature. The admiring little folk imitating their elders. They were playing mob, and had achieved success which promised to be a good deal more serious than they had bargained for. It was not a dull excursion for me. I managed to put in the time very well. I made various acquaintanceships, and in my quality of stranger was able to ask as many questions as I wanted to. A thing which naturally interested me as a statesman was the matter of wages. I picked up what I could under that head during the afternoon. A man who wasn't had much experience and doesn't think is apt to measure a nation's prosperity or lack of prosperity by the mere size of the prevailing wages. If the wages be high, the nation is prosperous. If low, it isn't, which is an error. It ain't what some get, it's how much you can buy with it. That's the important thing, and it's that tells whether your wages are high in fact or only high in name. I could remember how it was in the time of our great Civil War in the 19th century. In the North, a carpenter got $3 a day, gold valuation. In the South, he got 50. Payable with Confederate shin plaques worth $1 a bushel. In the North, a suit of overalls cost $3, a day's wages. In the South, it cost $75, which was 2 days' wages. Other things were in proportion. Consequently, wages were twice as high in the North as they were in the South, because one wage had much more purchasing power than the other had. Yes, I made various acquaintances in the hamlet, and the thing that grafted me a good deal was to find our new coins in circulation. Lots of mill raise, lots of mills, lots of cents, a good many nickels and some silver. All this among the artisans and commonality generally. Yes, and even some gold, but that was at the bank. That is to say, the goldsmiths. I dropped in there while Marco, the son of Marco, was haggling with the shopkeeper over a quarter of a pound of salt, and asked for a change for a $20 gold piece. They furnished it, that is, after they had chewed the piece and rung it on the counter, and tried acid on it, and asked me where I got it, and who I was, and where I was from, and where I was going to, and when I expected to get there, and perhaps a couple hundred more questions. And when they got aground, I went right on and furnished them a lot of information voluntarily. Told them I owned a dog, and his name was Watch, and my first wife was a Free Will Baptist, and her grandfather was a Prohibitionist, and I used to know a man who had 2 thumbs on each hand, a wart on the inside of his upper lip, and died in the hope of a glorious resurrection, and so on, and so on, and so on, till even that hungry village questioner began to look satisfied and also a shade put out. But he had to respect a man of my financial strength, and so he didn't give me any lip. But I noticed he took out of his underlings, which was a perfectly natural thing to do. Yes, they changed my 20, but I judged it strained the bank a little, which was a thing to be expected, for it was the same as walking into a paltry village store in the 19th century and requiring the boss of it to change a $2,000 bill for you all of a sudden. He could do it, maybe, but at the same time he would wonder how a small farmer happened to be carrying so much money around in his pocket, which was probably this goldsmith's thought, too, for he followed me to the door and stood there gazing after me with reverent admiration. Our new money was not only handsomely circulating, but its language was already glibly in use. That is to say, people had dropped the names of the former moneys and spoke of things as being worth so many dollars or cents or mills or mill raise now. It was very gratifying. We were progressing, that was sure. I got to know several master mechanics, but about the most interesting fellow among them was blacksmith Dowley. He was a live man and a brisk talker, and had 2 journeymen and 3 apprentices, and was doing a raging business. In fact, he was getting rich hand over fist and was vastly respected. Marco was very proud of having such a man for a friend. He had taken me there ostensibly to let me see that big establishment which bought so much of his charcoal, but really to let me see what easy and almost familiar terms he was on with this great man. Dally and I fraternized at once. I had just such picked men, splendid fellows, under me in the Colt Arms factory. I was bound to see more of him, so I invited him to come out to Marco's Sunday and dine with him. Marco was appalled and held his breath, and when his grand day accepted, he was so grateful that he almost forgot to be astonished at the condescension. Marco's joy was exuberant, but only for a moment. Then he grew thoughtful, then sad, and when he heard me tell Dally I should have Dickon, the boss mason, and Smug, the boss wheelwright, out there too, the cold dust on his face turned to chalk and lost his grip. But I knew what was the matter with him. It was the expense. He saw ruin before him. He judged that his financial days were numbered. However, on our way to invite the others, I said, "You must allow me to have these friends come, and you must allow me to pay the cost." His face cleared, and he said with spirit, "But not all of it, not all of it. Ye cannot well bear a burden like to this alone." I stopped him and said, "Now, let's understand each other on the spot, old friend. I am only a farm bailiff, it is true, but I am not poor, nevertheless. I have been very fortunate this year. You would be astonished to know how I have thriven. I tell you the honest truth when I say I could squander away as many as a dozen feasts like this and never care that for the expense." And I snapped my fingers, and I could see myself rise a foot at a time in Marco's estimation. And when I fetched out those last words, I was become a very tower for style and altitude. So you see, you must let me have my way. You can't contribute a cent to this orgy. That's settled. It's grand and good of you. No, it isn't. You've opened your house to Jones and me in the most generous way. Jones was remarking upon it today, just before you came back from the village. For although he wouldn't be likely to say such a thing to you, because Jones isn't a talker and is indifferent in society, he has a good heart and a grateful, and knows how to appreciate it when he is well treated. Yes, you and your wife have been very hospitable toward us. Ah, brother, 'tis nothing, such hospitality. But it is something. The best a man has, freely given, is always something, and it is as good as a prince can do, and ranks right along beside it. For even a prince can but do his best. And so we'll shop around and get up this layout now, and don't you worry about this expense. I'm one of the worst spendthrifts that ever was born. Why do you know sometimes in a single week I spend? But never mind about that, you never believe it anyway.
Incoming.
And so we went gaddling along, dropping in here and there, pricing things and gossiping with the shopkeepers about the right, and now and then running across pathetic reminders of it, in the persons of shunned and tearful and houseless remnants of families whose homes had been taken from them and their parents butchered or hanged. The raiment of Marco and his wife was of course low linen and linsey-woolsey respectively, and resembled township maps, it being made up pretty exclusively of patches which had been added, township by township, in the course of 5 or 6 years, until hardly a hand's breadth of the original garments was surviving in present. Now I wanted to fit these people out with new suits, on account of that swell company, and I didn't know just how to get at it with delicacy, until at last it struck me that as I had already been liberal in inventing word gratitude for the king, it would be just the thing to back it up with evidence of substantial sort. So I said, "And Marco, there's another thing which you must permit, out of kindness for Jones, because you wouldn't want to offend him. He was very anxious to testify his appreciation in some way, but he is so different he couldn't venture it himself. And so he begged me to buy some little things and give them to you and Dame Phyllis, and let him pay for them without you ever knowing they came from him. You know how a delicate person feels that sort of thing. And so I said I would, and we would keep mum. Well, his idea was a new outfit of clothes for you both. Oh, it is wastefulness. It must not be, brother. It may not be. Consider the vastness of the sum. Hang the vastness of the sum. Try to keep quiet for a moment and see how it would seem. A body can't get in a word edgeways. You talk so much. You ought to cure that, Marco. It isn't good form, you know, and it will grow on you if you don't check it. Yes, we'll step in here and now and price this man's stuff. And don't forget to remember not to let on to Jones that you know he had anything to do with it. You can't think how curiously sensitive and proud he is. He's a farmer. Pretty fairly well-to-do farmer. And I'm his bailiff. But the imagination of that man. Why, sometimes when he forgets himself and gets to blowing off, you'd think he was one of the swells of the earth, and you might listen to him 100 years and never take him for a farmer, especially if he talked agriculture. He thinks he's a sheol of a farmer, thinks he's old grayback from way back, but between you and me privately, he don't know as much about farming as he does about running a kingdom. Still, whatever he talks about, you want to drop your underjaw and listen. Did that ever happen? No? The same as if you had never heard such incredible wisdom in all your life before and were afraid you might die before you got enough of it. That will please Jones. No? Well, tell me what happened. It tickled Marco to the marrow to hear about such an odd character, but it also prepared him for accidents. And in my experience, when you travel with a king who is letting on to be something else and can't remember it more than about half the time, you can't take too many precautions. This was the best store we had come across yet. It had everything in it, in small quantities, from anvils and dry goods all the way down to fish and pinback jewelry. I concluded I would bunch my whole invoice right here and not go pricing around anymore. So I got rid of Marco by sending him off to invite the mason and the wheelwright, which left the field free for me. For I never care to do a thing in a quiet way. It's got to be a theatrical, or I don't take any interest in it. I showed up money enough in a careless way to corral the shopkeeper's respect, and then I wrote down a list of things I wanted and handed it to him to see if he could read it. He could, and was proud to show that he could. He said he had been educated by a priest and could both read and write. He ran it through and remarked with satisfaction that it was a pretty heavy bill. Well, and so it was, for a little concern like that. And I was not only providing a swell dinner, but some odds and ends of extras. I ordered that things be carted out and delivered at the dwelling of Marco, the son of Marco, by Saturday evening, and send me the bill at dinner time Sunday. I thank you for the lemon. He said I could depend upon the promptness and exactitude. It was the rule of the house. He also observed that he would throw in a couple of Miller guns for the Marco's gratis, that everybody was using them now. He had a mighty opinion of that clever device I had said. And please fill them up to the middle mark, too, and add that to the bill. He would with pleasure. He filled them, and I took them with me. I couldn't venture to tell him that the Miller gun was a little invention of my own. Then I had officially ordered that every shopkeeper in the kingdom keep them on hand and sell them at a government price, which was the merest trifle, and the shopkeeper got that, not the government. We furnished them for nothing. Some lemonade. The king had hardly missed us when we got back at nightfall. He had early dropped again into the dream of a grand invasion of Gaul, with the whole strength of the kingdom at his back, and the afternoon had slipped away without his ever coming to himself again.
Okay, so this is what he wanted. I'll give you this. I'll probably do a private video, though. I feel like that'll be appropriate here. With these last two videos. I talk a little bit about it. And now that I listen to this, he actually mentions what I talk about. So that actually makes more sense. I didn't hear him say that. When I was reading it, I didn't pay attention to that, the gun. So, I'll be honest. That makes me feel better about that. Yeah, these decks, dude. I don't really feel like doing these live. That's the kind of thing about it. It's like you left me in a corner here.
Can you please elaborate on that and explain exactly what happened? I think that was right around the time I was reading in the newspaper the kid got arrested for having a lemonade stand on the corner of a street next to a gas station.
Oh, that's not the right move on that.
So tell me what happened here, because that's not the truth. They try to ignore their way out? No, they're definitely not going to ignore their way out. I would definitely like to know whether there's sinus pressure there on the bats. I think Fallout was just mentioned a while ago. Oh, no. We're not doing raindrops. That would be the Chicago bean. It's kind of like lava rock. Mark, you ever look at lava rock and you see the pores, the holes? So if you look at the Chicago bean, the blue, you can see the pores, the vats, each individual little hole that they have going on in that metal. Very discreet. I would assume that it's probably zooming in on the brick, if there be any. Oh, I don't need to see that. Can you tell me what happened? I would love to know this. That super bass, Nikki, is what that is. Especially when you're moving eyes with black. That would be the stealth bomber, Mark. It keeps going over to the black edge over here. I'm on point. I know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at the X's. Okay. So, 32, Dally's humiliation. Well, when that cargo arrived towards sunset Saturday afternoon, I had my hands full to keep the Marcos from fainting. They were sure Jones and I were ruined past help, and they blamed themselves as accessories to this bankruptcy. You see, in addition to the dinner materials, which called for a sufficiently round sum, I had bought a lot of extras for the future comfort of the family. For instance, a big lot of wheat, a delicacy as rare to the tables of their class as was ice cream to a hermit's. Also a sizable deal dinner table, also 2 entire pounds of salt, which was another piece of extravagance in those people's eyes. Also crockery, stools, the clothes, a small cask of beer, and so on. I instructed the Marcos to keep quiet about this sumptuousness, so as to give me a chance to surprise the guests and show off a little. Concerning the new clothes, the simple couple were like children. They were up and down all night to see if it wasn't nearly daylight, so that they could put them on, and they were into them at last as much as an hour before dawn was due. Then their pleasure, not to say delirium, was so fresh and novel and inspiring that the sight of it paid me well for the interruptions which my sleep had suffered. The king had slept just as usual like the dead. The Marcos could not thank him for their clothes, that being forbidden, but they tried every way they could think of to make him see how grateful they were, which all went for nothing. He didn't notice any change. He's talking about these guys. They'll drive by. They basically do circles with their rice mufflers. I give Marquise rides, so I only discreetly saw it like several times. But I mean, every time you were over there, it was the same dude every time, making noise. And at one point, one of his buddies, I think it might have been his brother, like he kind of even pointed it out. They'll sit there and drive by KFC. It's 100% of the time. Like a form of torture. You're definitely on the main road. You have that going for you. However, when you start creating a circle and a pattern on that circle and checkpoints in the circle, it's kind of like the CERN, the Hadron Collider. It requires a checkpoint. So that's what he's talking about there. For argument's sake, if you want to argue the main road, my argument, CERN has a main road. I'm sure it's devastating to humanity. For this, I'm gonna smoke. Hold on, Mark. We're gonna get out the good stuff for this guy. I noticed that. I'm glad you noticed that. Marquise. I work with Marquise. He's good. He's a hard worker. Here I am smoking weed. I don't know where you're coming from. You have yours, I have mine. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Can we have times and dates? Was it 2 or 3? That's what I was looking for, times and dates of what you were talking about
specifically. A little bit more specific here, what you're talking about. And we're definitely not going to be talking through a TV screen without actual, like, any proper communication. You know what I mean? When there has been no, you see where I'm coming from. So tell me what happened. I need times and dates of this. Ooh, dude, that's unfortunate. I don't want to see that. So, okay, so this is definitely someone else's shame. What else do I know? As far as his brother, he got arrested with a gun charge, I thought. I don't know what happened to that. In fact, I think that's where I stopped working at Sonic when we went our separate ways. He stopped playing, that's where we stopped playing softball as well. So that shame is not my shame. No. I need the exact time and date of what you're talking about. Specifically. What were we talking about? The bailiff? You said a bailiff? I need the exact time and date of this because that's not the truth. Oh, my friend outside said no. That's not the truth. On the paragraph here, Dally. Can I have exact time and date? Furthermore, can we go back to the 1930s? This was actually before the 1930s. If I recall, I would have to look that up, actually. So, again, for the last time, I need exact time and dates of what you're referring to. And also, I need a warrant on the Chicago Bean Cloudgate for the the water drops that are going on there. They're using the red light, is what it is. And I would assume that it would be a girl and her estrogen. So that needs to be removed. I need exact time and dates.
He says it.
Of what you're referring to, because they don't exist. Can we please have that? I'm waiting. Judge. I'm going to do this live. I won't get mad and get irate here. The bailiff. That's what, again, I've said it 100 times. They keep trying to avatar me. And then transition the avatar. I need exact time and dates of what you're referring to because you don't have them. And I have more than enough evidence to put you away now. Oh, that eye there. That's why. I will. Most definitely. Especially with this. I don't need to feel your shame. I don't have that shame. In fact, he was nothing but a pleasure and a good time. He was a hard worker. There's crying baby right there. Keep going with that. Keep going on that. Let me take a hit. Oh, I can feel every little eye movement. It's the red light. You don't have the exact time, date, or anything. In fact, you made false statements and are painting me in marquees in bad light, I think is what he's pointing out. What I was talking about was a lemonade stand and torture that was mentioned and actually pointed out in the arc. So, if you're talking about a blunt, are we talking about a blunt here? Let me go through this. The children here. The gun charge, though, that might be what that is, as far as shame, honestly. That bot that you have, Mark. You have a right to defend yourself. I'm not going to argue that. Get that out of my face. Nuclear weapon. Get that out of my face. You're pardoned. Case dismissed. I'm not going to hear that at all. Especially if it's like, if you have a license, you may not have a conceal you know what I mean, going state to state. I think that might have been what it is. They have different laws as far as that is concerned to conceal a license to carry and conceal. I don't know what happened. I like I said, so I can't further that. Marco Polo, bro. Unless he's shooting people up, I really don't care. What say you? I need exact time and dates. It turned out to be one of those rich and rare fall days, which is just a June day toned down to a degree where it is heaven to be out of doors. Oh, no, not at all. Toward noon, the guests arrived, and we assembled under a great tree, and were soon as sociable as old acquaintances. Even the king's reserve melted a little, though it was some little trouble to him to adjust himself to the name of Jones along at first. I had asked him to try to not forget that he was a farmer, but I had also considered it prudent to ask him to let the thing stand at that, and not elaborate it any, because he was just the kind of person you could depend on to spoil a little thing like that if you didn't warn him. His tongue was so handy, and his spirit so willing, and his information so uncertain. Dally was in fine feather, and I early got him started, and then adroitly worked him around unto his own history, for a texting himself for a hero, and then it was good to sit there and hear him hung. Self-made man, you know. They know how to talk. They do deserve more credit than any other breed of men. Yes, that is true, and they are among the very first to find it out, too. He told how he had begun life in Orphan, lad without money and without friends able to help him. How he had lived as the slaves of the meanest master lived, and how his day's work was from 16 to 18 hours long, and yielded him only enough black bread to keep him in half-fed condition. How his faithful endeavors finally attracted the attention of a good blacksmith, who came near knocking him dead with kindness by suddenly offering, when he was totally unprepared, to take him as his bound apprentice for 9 years and give him board and clothes and teach him the trade, or mysteries, Dally called it. That was his first great rise, his first gorgeous stroke of fortune, and you saw that he couldn't yet speak of it without a sort of elegant wonder and delight that such a gilded promotion should have fallen to the lot of a common human being. He got no new clothing during the apprenticeship, but on his graduation day his master tricked him out in Spain new towel linens that made him feel unspeakably rich and fine. I remember me of that day. The wheelwright sang out with enthusiasm. And I likewise, cried the mason. I would not believe they were thine own. In faith I could not. Nor other, shouted Dally with sparking eyes. I was like to lose my character. The neighbors winning I had mayhap been stealing. It was a great day, one forgetteth not days like that. Yes, and his master was a fine man, and prosperous, and always had a great feast of meat twice in the year, and with it white bread, true wheaten bread, in fact, lived like a lord, so to speak, and in time Dally succeeded to the business and married the daughter. And now consider what has come to pass, said he impressively. 2 times in every month there is fresh meat upon my table. He made a pause here to let the fact sink home, and then added, and 8 times salt meat. It is even true, said the wheelwright, with bated breath. I know with my own knowledge, said the mason in the same reverent fashion. On my table appeareth white bread every Sunday in the year, added the master smith with solemnity. I leave it to your own consciences, friend, if this not also true. By my head, yes, cried the mason. I can testify it, and I do, said the wheelwright. And as to furniture, ye shall say yourselves what mine equipment is. He waved his hand in fine gesture, granting frank and unhampered freedom of speech, and added, Speak as ye are moved, speak as ye would speak, and I were not here. Ye have 5 stools, and of the sweetest you should have that. Albeit your family is but 3, said the wheelwright with deep respect.
and 6 wooden goblets, and 6 platters of wood, and 2 of pewter to eat and drink from withal, said the mason, impressively. And I say it, as knowing God is my judge, and we tarry not here away, but must answer at the last day for the things said in the body, be they false or be they sooth. Now you know what manner of man I am, Brother Jones, said the smith, with a fine and friendly condescension, and doubtless you would look to find me a man jealous of his due of respect, but sparing of outgo to strangers till the rating and quality be assured. But trouble yourself not, as concerning that. Wit ye well ye shall find me a man that regardeth not these matters, but is willing to receive any he as his fellow and equal, that carrieth a right heart in his body, be his worldly estate howsoever honest. And in token of it, here's my hand, and I say with my own mouth, we are equals. And he smiled around on the company with the satisfaction of a god who is doing a handsome and gracious thing, and is quite well aware of it. The king took the hand with a poorly disguised reluctance, and let go of it as willingly as a lady lets go of a fish, all of which had a good effect. For it was mistaken for an embarrassment natural to one who was being called upon my greatness. The dame brought out the table now, and set it under the tree. It caused a visible stir of surprise, it being brand new and a sumptuous article of deal. But the surprise rose higher still when the dame, with a body oozing easy indifference at every pore, but eyes that gave it all away by absolutely flaming with vanity, slowly unfolded an actual Simon Pure tablecloth and spread it. That was a notch above even the blacksmith's domestic grandeurs, and it hit him hard. You could see it. But Marco was in paradise. You could see that, too. Then the dame brought 2 fine new stools. Whew! That was a sensation. It was visible in the eyes of every guest. Then she brought 2 more, as calmly as she could. Sensation again, with awed murmurs. Again she brought 2 walking on air. She was so proud. The guests were petrified, and the mason muttered, "There's that about earthly pomps, which doth evermore so to reverence." As the dame turned away, Marco couldn't help slapping the climax while the thing was hot. So he said, with what was meant for a languid composure, with a poor imitation of it, "These suffice, leave the rest." So there was more yet. It was a fine effect. I couldn't have played the hand better myself. From this out, the madame piled up the surprises with a rush that fired the general astonishment up to the 150 in the shade, and at the same time paralyzed expression of it down to gasped ohs and ahs, and mute upliftings of hands and eyes. She fetched crockery, new and plenty of it, new wooden goblets, a chicken, a goose, eggs, roast beef, roast mutton, a ham, a small roast pig, and a wealth of genuine white wheaten bread. Take it by and large, that spread layeth everything far and away in the shade that ever that crowd had been before. And while they sat there just simply stupefied with wonder and awe, I sort of waved my hand as if by accident, and the storekeeper's son emerged from space and said he had come to collect. "That's all right," I said indifferently. "What is the amount? Give us the items." Then he read off this bill while those 3 amazed men listened, and serene waves of satisfaction rolled over my soul, and alternate waves of terror and admiration surged over Marco. He ceased. There was a pale and awful silence. Not a limb stirred, not a nostril betrayed that passage of breath. "Is that all?" I asked, in a voice of the most perfect calmness. "All fair, sir, save that certain matters of light moment are placed together under a head, height sundries. If I would like you, I will set..." "It is of no consequence," I said, accompanying the word with a gesture of most utter indifference. "Give me the grand total, please." The clerk leaned against the tree to stay himself, and said 39,150 milrays. The wheelwright fell off his stool. The others grabbed the table to save themselves, and there was a deep and general ejaculation of, "God be with us in the day of disaster!" The clerk hastened to say, "My father charges me to say he cannot honorably require you to pay it all at this time, and therefore only prayeth you." I paid no more heed than if he were the idle breeze, but with an air of indifference amounting almost to weariness, got out my money and tossed $4 onto the table. Ah, you should have seen them stare.
The clerk was astonished and charmed. He asked me to retain one of the dollars as security until he could go to town, and I interrupted. What, and fetch back 9 cents? Nonsense. Take the whole, keep the change. There was an amazed murmur to this effect. Verily, this bean is made of money. He throweth it away, even as if it were dirt. The blacksmith was a crushed man. The clerk took his money and reeled away. I said to Marco, his wife, "Good folk, here's a little trifle for you." Handed the miller guns as if it were a matter of no consequence, though each of them contained 15 cents in solid cash. And while the poor creatures went to pieces with astonishment and gratitude, I turned to the others and said as calmly as one would ask the time of day, "Well, if we were all ready, I judge that dinner is. Come fall to." Ah, well, it was immense, yes, it was a daisy. I don't know that I ever put a situation together better or got happier spectacular effects out of the materials available. The blacksmith, well, he was simply mashed. Man, I wouldn't have felt what that man was feeling for anything in the world. Here he had been blowing and bragging about his grand meat feast twice a year, and his fresh meat twice a month, and his salt meat twice a week, and his white bread every Sunday the year round. All for a family of 3. The entire cost for the year not above 69.2.6. 69 cents, 2 meals, and 6 meal rays. And all of a sudden, here comes along a man who slashes out nearly $4 on a single blowout. And not only that, but acts as if it made him tired to handle such small sums. Yes, Dally was a good deal wilted, and shrunk up and collapsed. He had the aspect of a bladder balloon that's been stepping on by a cow. What's today? May 27th? He was like he went from June to the 4th. So now you're going to have to back that up, which you do not. So. I
forgot to put the deuce.
Damn. Which you do not, and you cannot. So everything I said here, with the torture and everything, as was pointed out, I think that was an SOS for my friend, and I picked up on the hint. So, hi, how are you? Chapter 33. 6th century political economy. However, I made a dead set of him, and before the first third of the dinner was reached, I had him happy again. It was easy to do. In a country of ranks and castes. You see, in a country where they have ranks and castes, a man isn't ever a man. He's only part of a man. He can't ever get his full growth. You prove your superiority over him in station, or rank, or fortune, and that's the end of it. He knuckles down. You can't insult him after that. No, I don't mean quite that. Of course you can insult him. I only mean it's difficult. And so, unless you've got a lot of useless time in your hands, it doesn't pay to try. I had the Smith's reverence now, because I was apparently immensely prosperous and rich. I could have had his adoration if I had some little gimmick title of nobility. And not only his, but any commoners in the land, though he were the mightiest production of all the ages, in intellect, worth, and character, and I bankrupt in all 3. This was to remain so, as long as England should exist in the earth. With the spirit of prophecy upon me, I could look into the future and see her erect statues and the monuments to her unspeakable Georges, and other royal and noble clothed horses, and leave unhonored the creators of this world, after God, Gutenberg, Watt, Arkwright, Whitney, Morse, Stevenson, Bell. The king got his cargo aboard, and then, the talk not turning upon a battle conquest or ironclad duel, he dueled down to drowsiness and went off to take a nap. Mrs. Marlowe cleared the table, placed the beer keg handy, and went away to eat her dinner on leavings in humble privacy.
and the rest of us soon drifted into matters near and dear to the hearts of our sort. Business and wages, of course. At a first glance, things appeared to be exceeding prosperous in this little tributary kingdom, whose lord was King Bagdemagus, as compared with the state of things in my own region. They had a protection system in full force here, whereas we were working along down toward free trade by easy stages, and were now about halfway. Before long, Dally and I were doing all the talking, the others hungrily listening. Dally warmed to his work, snuffed an advantage in the air, and began to put questions which he considered pretty awkward ones for me. And they did have something of that look. That needs to be taken off. Where's that coming from? In your country, brother, what is the wage of master bailiff, master hen, carter, shepherd, swineherd? 25 milrays a day. That is to say, a quarter of a cent. The smith's face beamed with joy. He said, with us they are allowed the double of it. And what may a mechanic get? Carpenter, dauber, mason, painter, blacksmith, wheelwright, and the like? On the average, 50 milrays, half a cent a day. Oh-ho! With us they are allowed 100. With us any good mechanic is allowed a cent a day. And I count out the tailor, but not the others. They are all out of cent a day, and driving times they got more. Yes, up to 110, even 15 milrays a day. I paid 115 myself within the week. For protection. No, to show with free trade. And his face shone upon the company like a sunburst, but I didn't scare at all. I rigged up my pile driver and allowed myself 15 minutes to drive him into the earth. Drive him all in. Drive him until not even the curve of his skull should show above ground. Here is the way I started in on him. I asked, what you pay pound for salt? 100 milrays. We pay 40. What do you pay for beef and mutton? When you buy it? That was a neat hit. It made the color come. It varies somewhat, but not much. One may say 75 milrays a pound. We pay 33. What do you pay for eggs? 50 milrays the dozen. We pay 20. What do you pay for beer? It costs us 8 1/2 milrays. We get it for 4. 25 bottles for a cent. What do you pay for wheat? At the rate of 900 milrays the bushel. We pay 400. What do you pay for a man's towel linen suit? 13 cents. We pay 6. What do you pay for a stuff gown for the wife of the laborer or the mechanic? We pay 8 cents, 4 mils. Well, observe the difference. You pay 8 cents and 4 mils. We pay only 4 cents. I prepared how to sock it to him. I said, look here, dear friend. What's become of your high wages? You were bragging so about a few minutes ago. And I looked around on that company with a placid satisfaction, for I had slipped up on him gradually and tied him hand and foot, you see, without his ever noticing that he was being tied at all. What's become of those noble high wages of yours? I seem to have knocked the stuffing all out of them, it appears to me. But if you will believe me, he merely looked surprised. That is all. He didn't grasp the situation at all. Didn't know he had walked into a trap. Didn't discover that he was in a trap. I could have shot him from sheer vexation. With cloudy eye and a struggling intellect, he fetched this out. Mary, I seem not to understand. It is proved that our wages be doubled thine. How then may it be that thou'st knocked therefrom the stuffing? And miscall not the wondering word, this being the first time under grace and providence of God, it hath been granted me to hear it. Well, I was stunned, partly with this unlooked for stupidity on his part, and partly because his fellows so manifestly sided with him and were of his mind, if you might call it mind. My position was simple enough, plain enough. How could it ever be simplified more? However, I must try. Why, look here, Brother Dally, don't you see? Your wages are merely higher than ours in name, not in fact. Hear him. They are the double. Ye have confessed it yourself. Yes, I don't deny that at all. But that's got nothing to do with it. The amount of the wages in mere coin with meaningless names attached to them to know them by has got nothing to do with it. The thing is, how much can you buy your wages? That's the idea. While it is true that with you a good mechanic is allowed about $3 and a half a year, and with us only about $1.75, there, you're confessing it again. You're confessing it again. Confound it, I've never denied it, I tell you. What I say is this. With us, half a dollar buys more than a dollar buys with you, and therefore it stands to reason, and the commonest kind of common sense, that our wages are higher than yours. He looked dazed and said despairingly, Verily, I cannot make it out. Ye've just said ours are the higher, and with some same breath ye take it back. Oh, great Scott, isn't it possible to get such a simple thing through your head? Now look here, let me illustrate. We pay 4 cents for a woman's stuff gown. You pay 8.40, which is 4 meals more than double. What do you allow a laboring woman who works on a farm? 2 meals a day. Very good. We allow but half as much. We pay her only 1/10 of a cent a day. And, again, wait, now you see, the thing is very simple. This time you'll understand it. For instance, it takes your woman 42 days to earn her gown. At 2 meals a day, 7 weeks' work. But ours earns hers in 40 days. 2 days short of 7 weeks. Your woman has a gown, and her whole 7 weeks' wages are gone. Ours has 2 days' wages left to buy something else with. There, now you understand. He looked, well, he merely looked dubious. It's the most I can say. So did the others. I waited to let the thing work. Daly spoke at last and betrayed the fact that he actually hadn't gotten away from his rooted and grounded superstitions yet. He said, with a trifle of hesitancy, But you cannot fail to grant that 2 meals a day is better than 1. Shucks, well of course, I hated to give it up, so I chanced another flyer. Let us suppose a case. Suppose one of your journeymen goes out and buys the following articles. 1 pound of salt, 1 dozen eggs, 1 dozen pints of beer, 1 bushel of wheat, 1 towel linen suit, 5 pounds of beef, 5 pounds of mutton. The lot will cost him 32 cents. It takes him the 32 working days to earn the money. 5 weeks and 2 days. Let him come to us and work 32 days at halfway wages. He can buy all those things for a shade under 14.5 cents. They will cost him a shade under 29 days' work. And he will have about half a week's wages over. Carry it through the year. He would have nearly a week's wages every 2 months. Your man nothing. Thus saving 5 or 6 weeks' wages in a year. Your man not a cent. Now, I reckon you understand that high wages and low wages are phrases that don't mean anything in the work until you find out which of them will buy the most. By the time she gets it, she could probably already made her own at home in a day. It was a crusher. But alas, it didn't crush. No, I had to give it up. What those people valued was high wages. It didn't seem to be a matter of any consequence to them whether the high wages would buy anything or not. They stood for protection and swore by it, which was reasonable enough, because interested parties had gulled them into the notion that it was protection which had created their high wages. I proved to them that in a quarter of a century their wages had advanced by 30%, while the cost of living had gone up 100%. And that with us, in a short time, wages had advanced 40%, while the cost of living had gone steadily down. But it didn't do any good. Nothing could unseat their strange beliefs. Well, I was smarting under a sense of defeat. Undeserved defeat, but what of that? That didn't soften the smart any. And to think of the circumstances. The first statesman of the age, the capitalist man, the best informed man in the entire world, the loftiest uncrowned head that had moved through the clouds of any political firmament for centuries, sitting here apparently defeated in argument by an ignorant country blacksmith. And I could see that those others were sorry for me, which made me blush till I could smell my whiskers scorching. Put yourself in my place. Feel as mean as I did, as ashamed as I felt. Wouldn't you have struck below the belt to get even? Yes, you would. It is simple. It is simply human nature. Well, that is what I did. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm only saying that I was mad and anybody would have done it. Well, when I make up my mind to hit a man, I don't plan that love tap. No, that isn't my way. As long as I'm going to hit him at all, I'm going to hit him a lifter. And I don't jump at him all of a sudden and risk making a blundering halfway business of it. No. I get away off yonder to one side and work up on him gradually. so that he never suspects that I'm going to hit him at all. And by and by, all in a flash, he's flat on his back, and he can't tell for the life of him now, for the life of him how it all happened. That is the way I went for Brother Dally. I started to talking lazy and comfortable, as if I was just talking to pass the time, and the oldest man in the world couldn't have taken the bearings of my starting place and guessed where I was going to fetch up. Boys, there's a good many curious things about law and custom and usage and all the sort of thing, when you come to look at it. Yes, and about the drift of progressive human opinion and movement too. There are written laws. They perish. But there are also unwritten laws. They are eternal. Take the unwritten law of wages. It says they've got to advance, little by little, straight through the centuries. And notice how it works. We know what wages are now, here and there and yonder. We strike on average and say that's the wage of today. We know what the wages were 100 years ago, and what they were 200 years ago. That's as far back as we can get it, but it suffices to give us the law of progress, the measure and rate of the periodical augmentation. And so, without a document to help us, we can come pretty close to determining what the wages were 300 or 400 and 500 years ago. Good so far. Do we stop there? No. We stop looking backward. We face around and apply the law to the future. My friend, I can tell you what people's wages are going to do, be at any date in the future you want to know, for hundreds and hundreds of years. What good man what? Yes, in 700 years wages will have risen to 6 times what they are now. Here in your region, the farmers will be allowed 3 cents a day and mechanics 6. I wouldn't. I might die now and live then, interrupted Smug, the wheelwright, with a fine, avaricious glow in his eye. And that isn't all. They'll get their board besides, such as it is. It won't bloat them. 250 years later, pay attention now, a mechanic's wages will be, mind you, this is all, not guesswork. A mechanic's wages will then be 20 cents a day. There was a general gasp of awed astonishment. Dickon the mason murmured, with raised eyes and hands. More than 3 weeks' pay for 1 day's work. Riches! Of a truth, yes, riches, muttered Marco, his breath coming quick and short with excitement. Wages will keep on rising, little by little, as steadily as a tree grows, and at the end of 340 years more, there'll be at least one country where the mechanic's average wage will be 200 cents a day. It knocked them absolutely dumb. Not a man of them could get his breath for upwards of 2 minutes. And then the coal burner said prayerfully, "Might I but live to see it?" "It is the income of an earl," said Smug. "An earl, say ye?" said Dowley. "Ye could say more than that, to speak no lie. There's no earl in the realm of Bagdamagus that hath an income like to that. Income of an earl. It's the income of an angel. Now then, that is what is going to happen as regards wages. In that remote day, what man will earn with 1 week's work? That bill of goods which it takes you upwards of 50 weeks to earn now, some other pretty surprising things are going to happen too. Brother Dally, who is it that determines every spring what the particular wage of each kind of mechanic, laborer, and servant shall be for that year? Sometimes the courts, sometimes the town council, but most of all the magistrate. You may say, in general terms, it is the magistrate that fixes the wages. Doesn't ask any of those poor devils to help him fix their wages for them, does he? That were an idea. The master that's to pay him the money is the one that's rightly concerned in that matter. You will notice. Yes, but I thought the other man might have some little trifle stake in it, too. And even his wife and children, poor creatures. The masters are these noble, rich men, the prosperous generally. These few who do no work determine what pay the vast hive shall have those who do work. You see? They're combined, a trade union, to coin a new phrase, who band themselves together to force their lowly brothers to take what they choose to give. 1,300 years hence, so says the unwritten law, the combined will be the other way. And then how these fine people's posterity will fume and fret and grit their teeth over the insolent tyranny of trade unions. Yes, indeed, The magistrate will tranquilly arrange the wages from now clear way down into the 19th century, and then all of a sudden the wage earner will consider that a couple of 1,000 years or so is enough of those one-sided sort of thing, and he will rise up and take a hand in fixing his wages himself. Ah, he will have a long and bitter account of wrong and humiliation to settle. Do you believe he actually will help to fix his own wages? Yes, indeed, and he will be strong and able then. Brave times of truth, steered the prosperous Smith. Oh, and there's another detail. In that day, a master may hire a man for only just 1 day, or 1 week, or 1 month at a time if he wants to. What? It's true. Moreover, a magistrate won't be able to force a man to work for a master a whole year on a stretch whether the man wants to or not. Will there be no law or sense in that day? Both of them. Dowley, in that day a man will be his own property, not the property of magistrate and master, and he can leave town whenever he wants to, if the wages don't suit him, and they can't put him in the pillory for it. Perdition catch such an age, shouted Dowley in strong indignation, an age of dogs, an age barren of reverence for superiors and respect for authority. The pillory. Oh, wait, brother, say no good word for that institution. I think the pillory ought to be abolished. A most strange idea. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Is a man ever put in the pillory for a capital crime? No. Is it right to condemn a man to a slight punishment for a small offense and then kill him? There was no answer. I had scored my first point. For the first time, the smith wasn't up and ready. The company noticed it. Good effect. You don't answer, brother. You were about to glorify the pillory a while ago and shed some pity on a future age that isn't going to use it. I think the pillory ought to be abolished. What usually happens when a poor fellow is put in the pillory for some little offense that didn't amount to anything in the world? The mob try to have some fun with him, don't they? Yes. They begin by clodding him, and they laugh themselves to pieces to see him try to dodge one clod and get hit with another. Yes. Then they throw dead cats at him, don't they? Yes. Well then, suppose he has a few personal enemies in that mob, and here and there a man of a woman with a secret grudge against him. And suppose especially that he is unpopular in the community for his pride or his prosperity or one thing or another. Stones and bricks take the place of clod and cats presently, don't they? There is no doubt of it. As a rule, he is crippled for life, isn't he? Jaws broken, teeth smashed out, or legs mutilated, gangrene presently cut off, or an eye knocked out, maybe both eyes. It is true, God knoweth it. And if he is unpopular, he can depend on dying, right there in the stocks, can't he? He surely can. One may not deny it. I take it none of you are unpopular. By reason of pride or insolence or conspicuous prosperity or any of those things that excite envy and malice among the base scum of a village, you wouldn't think it much of a risk to take a chance in stocks. Dowley winced, visibly. I judged he was hit, but he didn't betray it by any spoken word. As for the others, they spoke out plainly and with strong feeling. They said they had seen enough of the stocks to know what a man's chance in them was, and they would never consent to enter them if they would comprise on a quick death by hanging. Well, to change the subject, for I think I've established my point that the stocks ought to be abolished. I think some of our laws are pretty unfair. For instance, if I do a thing which ought to deliver me to the stocks, and you know I did it, and yet keep still and don't report me, you will get the stocks if anybody informs on you. Ah, but that would serve you but right, said Dowley, for you must inform. So said the law. The others coincided. Well, all right, let it go, since you vote me down. But there's one thing which certainly isn't fair. The magistrate fixes the mechanic's wage at once a day, for instance. The law says that if any master shall venture, even under utmost press of business, to pay anything over that single day, even for a single day, he shall be both fined and pilloried for it. And whoever knows he did it and doesn't inform, they also shall be fined and pilloried. Now it seems to be unfair, Dowley, and a deadly peril to all of us, that because you thoughtlessly confessed a while ago that within a week you have paid a cent and 15 mil. Oh, I tell you, it was a smasher. You ought to have seen them to go to pieces, the whole gang. I had just slipped up on poor smiling, complacent Dowley so nice and easy and softly that he never suspected anything was going to happen till the blow came crashing down and knocked him all to rags. A fine effect. In fact, as fine as any I ever produced, with so little time to work it up in. But I saw in the moment that I had overdone the thing a little. I was expecting to scare them, but I wasn't expecting to scare them to death. They were mighty near it, though you see that they had been a whole lifetime learning to appreciate the pillory, and to have that thing staring them in the face, and every one of them distinctly at the mercy of me, a stranger, if I chose to go and report. Well, it was awful, and they couldn't seem to recover the shock. They couldn't seem to pull themselves together. Pale, shaky, dumb, pitiful? Why? They weren't any better than so many dead men. It was very uncomfortable. Of course, I thought that they would appeal to me and to keep mum, and then would shake hands and take a drink all around and laugh it off, and there an end. But no. You see, I was an unknown person among a cruelly oppressed and suspicious people. A people always accustomed of having advantage taken of their helplessness, and never expecting just a kind of treatment from any but their own families, and very closest intimates. Appeal to me to be gentle, to be fair, or to be generous. Of course, they wanted to, but they couldn't dare.